High drama in Connecticut's election. Next. Welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. The fallout from last week's state elections continues. If Dan Malloy is indeed sworn in as governor, the Democrats will have control of the governor's seat, the House, and the Senate for the first time in about 25 years. But is that scenario one that will prove productive? And will the specter of a lawsuit over balloting problems in Bridgeport ultimately derail his victory? We are joined today by venerable Democrat Bill Curry, twice a gubernatorial contender, and Republican upstart Corey Brinson, 30 years old, from Hartford, ran for Secretary of State. So we have a venerable Democrat, up-and-coming GOP Republican.
Does venerable mean old?
It means old.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Go ahead.
Know each other? You guys
no
know each
offense
other?
taken. We do now.
Young guy, old guy, Republican, Democrat. All right, so the election happened last week. The potential for the Dems now to control the governor's seat, the House, the Senate. Is that a good thing for the Democrats? We've seen these things implode in the past. What can happen here?
Well, sure. First of all, I think it's a good thing for the state. People talk about dividing the government between the parties in order to get accountability and checks and balances. More often you get bickering and gridlock. And if nothing else, 4 years from now, the people of the state will know who to credit or who to blame. I also think that the legislature in the state, and Governor Rell as well, in the last few years, there's been some drift. And I look at Dan Malloy, and I don't think he's a drift kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so their ability to pull together a lot of issues they've only been dreaming about is really there. What else is there? And I'll just add before I hand over to Corey. A huge deficit.
Yes, $3.5 billion.
That's right. And so when you talk about the dreams you've had, you have to put those next to that deficit. What I think Malloy understands very well is that what you do in that situation is you focus on making the rules work. You focus on changing the rules. You can change the rules or write the check. All right. And in this case, you change the rules.
Let's talk about this then, Corey Brinson, having a competitive balance. In Connecticut, they've always had a Republican governor for the last 20-odd years with Dems in the House and Senate. Some feel that balance is important. Your thoughts?
One-party rule is good for China, but it's not good for Connecticut. The Connecticut people, and we still don't know that it's not true, have enjoyed having a Republican executive in Connecticut for a reason. It's been a check and balance with the democratically controlled legislature, and I think that it's important that you have some. Connecticut is a moderate state. I think it's socially moderate, fiscally conservative, and I think if the Democrats overreach and end up increasing taxes, that they'll have payback in future elections. And so I think it's good to have a balance. I don't think one-party rule is ever good for Connecticut, and there's not going to be anybody there to stand up to the unions, and we're going to continue to have bloated government. So it's not a good thing.
Okay, from a legal standpoint, Bridgeport, the specter of Bridgeport, is there a case to make that, hey, the polls were opened later, that this may have compromised the election, or this is just sort of political posturing, the potential of a lawsuit?
I can't imagine. Michael Sheldon, first of all, is the judge who was brought in on this when the system went awry. He's a brilliant man. And the case to me seems really clear. When you've had that bad a snafu as they did in Bridgeport that day, you want to give the voters some relief. This isn't for one party or the other, or one candidate or the other. Those people had a right to go in and make their voices heard. What's happened, especially in urban polling places across this country in the last decade, is a scandal. It's not just here, it's Ohio, it's many places. I know there were some problems in other towns.
Disenfranchising, right?
And disenfranchising voters by the thousands in some cases. Florida and Ohio were the two high-profile examples, but there have been many others.
Asking for ID or asking for dual ID.
There have been all kinds of ways of suppressing, but also just not having enough ballots, or the place, or not having enough voting machines in Ohio.
Who's to blame, guys, in this situation? Who's to blame? The Bisowitz? Is it Bridgeport? Who do you blame in this?
I blame Susan Bicewicz.
Why?
She's the chief election officer of the state of Connecticut as Secretary of the State. It was her job to ensure that the municipalities had enough ballots, period. If she could maintain a voters list for 36,000 Democrats in her office when she was campaigning, but she didn't bother to make the time to make sure that Bridgeport had enough ballots. And that's the problem with our government. So be happy that Susan Bicewicz will no longer be serving as Secretary of State.
You agree?
But here's what you have to add to that, though, and that is that she's right when she says, Susan is right when she says that under this system, she didn't actually have the responsibility. Now, someone, Susan herself, the legislature, anybody involved should have looked at this a long time ago. The idea that we order the number of ballots based upon some local registrar's projection of turnout, it's insane.
Bad policy, right?
None of us knew this was true. I'll bet sitting here, most people in Connecticut, I didn't know it was true. Most people in Connecticut didn't know it was true. It's the kind of thing you can't believe it the first time you hear it.
Right.
But there's one Secretary of the State, Susan Bicewicz. It's her job to know. It's her job to make sure that everybody
and the legislature and the governor and all the election officials at local level who've been living with this for all these decades.
We can all agree
it's widely shared. It's a complete embarrassment, and it's Denise Merrill's first job, and I'll bet she thinks so already.
Now, what can we expect from what may be or looks to be a Malloy administration? What do you guys expect from a leadership standpoint?
Well, I hope it's a Tom Foley administration because as of today, it's not certified that Dan Malloy is the governor. If it is going to be Dan Malloy, I hope that he leads with bipartisan support or have a short run as CEO of the state of Connecticut government.
If it is a Foley administration, then we could get what?
I think that you're going to see a dogfight with the state legislature on how we close this huge deficit. I believe him at his word when he says he's not going to raise taxes and he's going to cut services, and that's what we're going to have to do. That's what Connecticut families have been doing around the state. I think with Malloy administration, we're looking at more taxes, and that's going to hurt small business owners, and there'll be somebody to pay for it.
Are we looking at more taxes no matter who is there, Foley, Malloy, that the reality is taxes are going to be raised? It's $3.5 billion. I mean, isn't the reality that you only cut so much? You guys can both chime in here. We're going to have taxes. Is that fair to say?
Even Foley, if I was hearing those debates correctly, even Foley himself only promised not to raise taxes in the first go-round, which means between now and May, so that he could come back in June
so
in a special session.
Right? We're going to have higher taxes.
And I don't think there's anybody, if you put every candidate in both parties on sodium pentothal, and you asked them then, is there going to be some tax increase, they would say yes. But I don't disagree with Corey on this point. There is going to have to be, and any Democrat watching the humbling of the president in this election knows walking in, there's never been a big constituency in this country for big bureaucracy. People want human scale institutions. They want simpler programs. They want the lowest possible tax rates. I think Foley, in being quite so anti-union as he was and being so anti-government, I think in the end it cost him some votes. This is a balanced state. But no matter who wins, they're going to come in, and the biggest thing they have to do is $3.5 billion, and that means enormous cuts, and it also means enormous efficiencies and changes and modernizations. And in that case, they're lucky to have Malloy in there because he knows how to do it.
Well, I think that to answer your question, Stan, can we resolve the budget deficit without tax increases? And I think the answer is yes. I think that we can have the government, we can have a government that we can afford. However, you can't be in bed with the unions and have them. Dan Malloy had them as part of on the campaign payroll, the state unions, and you can't get concessions out of them and reduce the cost of government. And so that's something that we're going to have to look at. Does the state of Connecticut need to be the largest employer in the state of Connecticut? That's something that we need to work on. And so it's going to be painful, but we're going to have to do something about it.
All right. Hang on to that thought there, Corey. When we come back, we'll look at the debilitating problems plaguing Connecticut and whether there are real solutions or just the same old rhetoric. You are watching The Stan Simpson Show. Don't go away.